It's a new era for the Arizona Cardinals with Jonathan Gannon taking over as the head coach and Monty Ossenfort now the GM. What can we expect from them in 2023? It's Cardinals Day, and we're breaking them down from every angle today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And, of course, a big welcome and shout-out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, instead of a happy National Made-Up Day today, I think it's appropriate for us to tip our cap to the super fans of the teams that have showed up the most throughout the course of this exercise, as we are on our 31st team today. So what I have is a list of the total numbers of downloads of shows that we have done dedicated to all of the 30 teams plus Arizona and New Orleans who are to be determined. And what I've done is I've disqualified the teams that went in the first 2 weeks because they have an extra week to 2 weeks of existence to have their shows watched versus the other shows. Have you seen this? Have you clicked on this?
I've seen it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've seen it. So you know we're going to give Cincinnati Bengals fans flowers. Never mind the fact that they have the most downloads, period, and their show ran on June 12th. And this series started on May 8th. The Detroit Lions, who ran on the 15th of June, have the third most downloads of any team. And then the Cleveland Browns fans, June 8th, 1 month after the start of the series, with the sixth most total downloads, but the third most that did not run in the first 2 weeks. Shout out to Bengals, Lions, and Browns fans. Y'all have showed up for your teams big throughout the course of this series.
Small market teams, baby.
Right?
They care, man. I love it.
Yeah, and ironically, looking at the teams down here towards the bottom, looking at Kansas City,
New York, Los Angeles,
San Francisco.
At the top, Cincinnati, Indy, Detroit, Carolina, Cleveland, Jacksonville. Come on now. Thank you, small market teams.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the teams that don't get listened to on the 4-letter major market every single day for 12 hours a day, to have fans of those teams come to this kind of content and really gravitate towards it and take to it and care about it. So shout out to you guys, but it's all your teams every day here on the Locked On Network, but wanted to give our flowers to those small market fan bases who have shown up big as we get ready to put a bow on this series today and tomorrow.
All right. Arizona Cardinals, you are center stage today. Kyle and I have taken the time to study your football team.
That?
What do you mean? Because I was working through some stuff in my throat. I don't know what to tell you, man. Happens.
Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, we're going to talk about them today. They're center stage. We've studied the film. We've studied your players. We've categorized every single player on the roster. Today we're going to break down the way we feel about this football team, offense, defense, and then we got to come to consensus on a few players that Kyle and I didn't quite see eye to eye on. And then again, folks, there's a big picture with all of this. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff in the coming weeks, stacking up these rosters, comparing position groups, and really setting the foundation for what we're expecting in 2023. But today is all about the Arizona Cardinals. We'll focus on the offensive side of the football to get things started. And I think you have to acknowledge that Kyler Murray, we don't know when he's going to be available this season, right? Late season ACL tear, quarterback that really relies on athleticism and, his twitch and movement within the pocket, his ability to extend plays, his ability to run. And I don't think that's one that you're going to want to rush back, especially if things get off to a slow start. It's kind of a lost season, and you don't want to just put them out there to put them out there. So it's an unsettled situation here at quarterback with presumably Colt McCoy starting almost the majority, if not all, of this season. And so that tempers my expectations for Arizona in year one under Jonathan Gannon. I think there's other questions on the roster that we'll get into, but I think right off the bat, as we focus on the offense, we have to acknowledge Kyler Murray's status.
Yeah, here's the good news. Joe, you mentioned at the very top the big picture perspective here in Arizona, working with 2 first-round picks next year. You got a new head coach, you got a new general manager. Like, you're at square one. And I think as we talk about this team, it's important to acknowledge you are at square one and you took the proper steps to position yourself to be effective with what you're going to try to do throughout the course of this year and the following years, which is trying to build a team in the image, in the vision of your brain trust that you've put in place. Now, Jonathan Gannon is a head coach. I think there's some questions there after what the coaching search looked like in Arizona and how that seemed like it was a challenge before ultimately settling on Jonathan Gannon and the timing there. Obviously, Philly makes the run to the Super Bowl, so you get him late in the process as a result. But Monty Ossenfort's really well respected executive and has been for a while. So I think that's a home run hire, regardless of whatever questions we have about Gannon and his forecast as a head coach. And offensively, I like where we took some swings of the bat. Well, obviously, you draft Paris Johnson in the first round, and he's going to get playing time early. He's got guard tackle flexibility. So I know he's right now penciled in at left guard next to DJ Humphries. Michael Wilson is a...
Can we have a Paris Johnson conversation while you brought him up here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I love Paris Johnson, but I love him at tackle. I mean, this guy's got length and athleticism for days. Like, all of his best attributes are going to be featured at tackle. Yes. And we saw it at Ohio State night and day. What this guy was at right guard is, whatever it was, 2021 and then 2022 playing left tackle. Like, he unlocked so much of himself as a player because his best attributes are on display at tackle.
What's the rush?
I just want to see him at tackle. What's the rush? Is you just pick this guy in the top 10. He's going to be a foundational piece of your roster. Get him in the damn spot that he's going to be able to play and help your team the most.
Maybe I'm biased here because I saw Laramie Tunsil spend his first year at left guard before Brandon Albert moved out. And if you're athletic and you've got the traits, I'd rather have you play than what are you going to do? Are you going to dump DJ Humphries entirely? Are you going to have him move spots? Beecham was solid.
Right. This has been on my mind all morning I knew we were going to have this conversation.
I did not, so you blitzed me here. I like
Well, I've just been thinking about it a lot because you have really 4 guys at tackle that intrigue me. DJ Humphries, of course, Paris Johnson, of course, Josh Jones, and Calvin Beecham. As I look at this season being a foundational year for Arizona, right? You can kind of find out who your parts are that you're going to work with moving forward. I don't think Calvin Beecham's going to be part of that. Is he a serviceable starting right tackle? Yes. But I would want to see more from Josh Jones. I'd want to see Paris Johnson. I would figure out a way for potentially someone to play right tackle and I just want Paris Johnson to be the left tackle. That's the forecast here. I know DJ Humphries has been a fixture there. I would find something else to do with DJ Humphries, even if that's right tackle, even if that's left guard, and I'd get Paris Johnson in the left tackle spot.
Isn't there some value, though? Because, whether it's Colt McCoy, Clayton Tune, I know there was some buzz this week that Clayton Tune might get a look at the start of the season before Kyler's healthy. But you're trying to evaluate everything, right? You're trying to evaluate quarterback play. You're trying to evaluate skill players. Is there not some value to having the best possible combination of 5 and an effective offensive line to help you evaluate all of the pieces that you have?
I think it's big. I think Paris Johnson becoming the best version of himself as quickly as possible is going to be best for this football team.
But what's the rush? Like, Paris Johnson's not going to be the difference in you making the playoffs in 2024 or not.
No, but I just want to see him play tackle. I think that his best qualities are unlocked at tackle.
Okay, so we have a distinct philosophical difference here, and that's fine. But I know we're got more ground to cover on the offensive side of the ball, but I also know we're on a schedule. We got to keep this thing moving. So we're going to get ready. I guess we'll continue offense here after a very important message, correct?
Yeah, of course. FanDuel, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, that's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Do we need to continue the offensive line debate?
Finding
what would you do? Okay, like are you trading DJ Humphries? You could trade DJ Humphries and
I think a lot about
space.
I think a lot about that, or Calvin Beachum. I'd absolutely think about moving on from one of those players.
If you did move Humphries, who's coming into year 8, he's 29 years old. He'll be 30 at the end of this season. He's got 3 years remaining left on his deal. Base salaries of 5.5 this year, 15.7 next year, and then 15.7 again in 2025. Those are the base salaries, effectively what whoever would trade for him would bring in. You would save 5.6 against the cap this year, but then incur 13.8 in dead cap in 2024 if you're the Cardinals to trade him. I got to check Beachum, but
yeah, I find a way to. I think it's a great idea. Move on from one of these players, get some assets. But I'm trying to get my most intriguing 5 players on the field that I think have a chance to be fixtures for me. And I think Paris Johnson's obviously one of those. I think Josh Jones should be one of those. And find ways to get those guys into the lineup.
Are you mentally? I mean, they brought Beachum back.
Yeah.
Would you trade Beachum? I mean, the Beachum pathways, it's the next 2 years he's owed $3.6 million in cash this year and 1.5 the following year.
That's a lot more digestible.
Yes, there's no. So if you move from Beachum, is Paris Johnson playing right tackle or is DJ Humphries playing right tackle? I
want Paris Johnson to be my left tackle.
Okay, well I don't know if that's going to happen, brother. But
I get it. I'm just telling you what I would do. Like I understand that that's probably not what's going to happen. I'm just saying how I would approach it. The rest of the offense deserves conversation.
Yes, it does. I think you have some youth at the skill group that you're hoping to figure out what Tre McBride is. Obviously, he was a 2nd-round pick in last year's draft in 2022. Michael Wilson, I like as a athletic, dense, big-bodied receiver with some physicality, which I think they desperately needed when you're looking at Marquise Brown, Zach Pascal, Greg Dortch, Rondale Moore as the other primary wide receivers on this. Having somebody with some level of physicality on the outside, I think there's a lot of upside there. And then speaking of Dortch and Rondale Moore, Dortch is a 3-year vet, and Rondale's coming into year 3 this year. I think you got to figure out what you have in those pieces. But Hollywood Brown, the investment that it took to get him in-house aside, and Michael Wilson with Ertz and McBride, I would love to see a lot of 12 personnel. Obviously, that's very different from what they have been under Cliff Kingsbury. So I think that element here makes this very much an evaluation year to kind of figure out who are we going to continue to move forward with or not.
I'm really excited about Greg Dortch. I thought he really came on last season, had some big-time productive games. I think he can be a really serviceable slot player and maybe even an impact slot player. So that's a guy who I think the arrow is pointing up for him. I'm very excited to see how he evolves. What do you think about this running back situation? James Conner, obviously a certain type of skill set. He's had some production, some durability issues, but the depth there, we'll see what Keontae Ingram is. Corey Clement, kind of a third back special teams type guy. Conner and Ingram is an interesting pair that I don't necessarily look at and say we can fully lean on them with the absence of a quarterback, right, in Kyler Murray not being available, but I think they're going to get a lot of run, right? They're going to get a lot of opportunities to try to give them a running game that they can lean on. But we'll see if Connor can stay healthy and then what that depth looks like.
I mean, Connor, hasn't touched the ball more than 200 times as a ball carrier, but once since 2018, right? And that was in 2021 when he posted all those touchdowns.
16,
now,
right?
Yeah, if you include receiving, he's been a pretty high volume receiving player effectively since he came into the league. His rookie season aside, there's a lot of targets there. So from a fantasy football perspective, of course, backs who can catch the ball really help move the needle. And I would not be surprised if that trend continues just based off of what we're expecting the offense to look like and the offensive line to look like with what the interior is with Hernandez and Yelda Froholt. We did the research on that one. Yelda Froholt as like 2 or 3 interior guys, and then potentially a rookie tackle starting at the other guard spot, unless Joe Marino gets his way. And then either Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune as your starting quarterback until Kyler Murray comes back. I just think, probably this is not going to be the spread, robust, big play type of offense that Arizona has tried to be in the past couple years. So would not be surprised to see Connor have himself a really productive season as an all-around threat in the backfield.
All right. We're going to shift to defense kind of mid-segment here.
Yep.
Obviously, Jonathan Gannon, a defensive-minded head coach, coming over and taking over this unit. Well, yeah, he's going to have some challenges here. I think they've got a lot of work to do personnel-wise. One thing that we know that is a staple of Jonathan Gannon is rotation with the defensive line. They had 70 sacks last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he really attributed that to guys being fresh. And obviously the caliber of talent here is nothing like what he had with the Eagles, but I'm interested to see what he can get from some of these guys up front. Najee Sanders, B.J. Ojolari, who I really like. Cam Thomas, they picked him fairly high 2 years ago. Is there something to unlock with L.J. Collier, former first-round pick of Seattle, never really came to fruition. Now he's with Arizona. Victor DiMukejee, who's been reasonably interesting. Jesse Luketa, who, that's not a guy I'm ever going to bet against. So I'm interested to see with this front, especially on the edge, who he can help unlock as part of this rotation. And through that, who steps up and really commands a lot of snaps here. Again, not of like a lot of blue chip talent here, but there's some intriguing young players that are going to get opportunity.
So if we go odd front, right? Assuming you go odd front, you got 2 B gap defenders and an A gap defender. Here are the names that are going to live in that world, in this division. Rashard Lawrence, Kevin Strong, Dante Stills, Carlos Watkins, Lecky Fotu, L.J. Collier, John Ledbetter.
Not great.
Joe.
Unserious.
They are going to get ran over up front. I just do not think we have the horsepower here. So you can rotate these guys all you want. That is the big challenge for Arizona in my mind, is defensively up front. And then, by the way, you brought in Kaiser White, who's familiar with the system, but is a 220-pound linebacker, right? And then you have Zaven Collins trying to live in this world where he's learning a new system. He has been very up and down thanks to instability defensively with his role in Arizona. Playing behind that front, like, if Collins is going to have success, there's a lot that has to go right based off of what he's been, what he's asked to do, what he's going to be asked to do in this defense. And I don't think he's going to have a lot of help to do it. So I feel for Zaven Collins as a first-round pick in the same way that I know we're both sympathetic to Isaiah Simmons in the situation that he was put in, that it took him as long as it has for them to feel like, oh, yeah, kind of guy played on the hash in college. Maybe we should play him more in the nickel. And then lo and behold, he's good in the nickel instead of trying to make him a stack up all linebacker. So that's not the problems of Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, but those are the sins of the past regime that you're looking at. Why hasn't Arizona had a lot of success drafting and developing? And you really feel like they picked players without having a prominent plan on how they were going to get them to be the best versions of themselves. So that's the concern that I have, is a high leverage player like Zaven Collins, who had a lot invested in him. The group that you have in front of him is not going to anchor the line particularly well, especially against heavy hitting offensive line like Seattle, and especially against a heavy hitting offensive line like San Francisco and how much they're going to run the ball.
All right. I want to talk about the secondary here after a quick break. And of course, we're going to come to consensus as we continue this conversation on the Arizona Cardinals today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. Well, Kyle, if there's anything to feel good about on this Cardinals defense, it's got to be the safety tandem of Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, right? I think that's your area of strength in terms of starters. I mean, Budda Baker, a player that we both agree is a roster cornerstone. I mean, we'll see if there's a long-term future. I know that there was a trade request. Nothing's really happened. We'll see. But when he's on the field, this guy's a high-impact safety, and he's got a nice running mate in Jalen Thompson alongside of him as a serviceable starter. So I like those two starters, but sorting out corner is going to be really interesting to me. I feel like their best player at corner might be Rashad Fenton. I'm not sure if he's going to start or not, but there's some resume there of good play that intrigues me. And I'd love to see between Rashad Fenton, Garrett Williams as a draft pick, we'll see what his health status is, and Antonio Hamilton to kind of be your featured corners that emerge from this pack. But I feel like we had questions about Arizona at corner for a long time, and I'm not sure that we're closer to having answers right now.
I'm mildly intrigued by what Marco Wilson can be too. I know he's had some high flashes of play. But yeah, you look at, I'm just as concerned with the corner room as I am with the defensive line. The interior, your A and B gap defenders. You don't have a lot of proven track record. You have a number of players who have kind of been discarded from numerous spots in spite of being young players.
Yeah.
That's not a good trend. Garrett Williams, I think there's plenty to get excited about there as a player who was off the radar throughout the draft process because of an injury, right?
Yep.
Gets drafted, I believe the third round, if I remember correctly. And you're just going to let those guys go out and play. But, I mean, if we're talking corners, Isaiah Simmons and Keitrell Clark is the appealing part of the corner room for me, and they're both nickel players. So how you handle coverage on the outside, I don't care how good your safeties are. I just think you're not going to win a lot of matchups on the perimeter unless these guys really emerge very quickly. And that's fine. Again, that through the lens and the perspective of what Arizona is as a team, they're a rebuilding franchise. So you have a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience. Let that competition play out, see who elevates their game, and then take that information and decide on where you want to invest from here, because you have a surplus of assets because of the trade that you made to go back from 3 to 12 to 6 and getting Paris Johnson, getting an extra first round pick in the process. Like, that's good process.
Yeah.
This roster is in line with where you would expect Arizona to be from a team building perspective. It's just not going to be a pretty product this year. But everybody understands that this is not tanking, right? This is shredding it down to the studs and building it back up. But as you look at what they have, you're hoping to find reasons for optimism. I don't see a lot of it on the defensive side of the ball for Arizona.
All right, so we got some players to come to consensus on. If I'm not mistaken, Greg Dortch, Will Hernandez, and Chris Barnes?
That's correct.
All right.
You already kind of went off on Dortch. So
yeah,
I'm
excited about Dortch, man. I have him as a pink, which is an incomplete evaluation, because last year he got some opportunity, had some very productive games, really showcasing himself well as a route runner, as a guy with good hands. I liken him to Jamison Crowder, watching him at Duke and then what he was for Washington early on. I think he can be that type of player, and I think the arrow is pointing up. So I think he's a pink, potentially at least quality depth, and maybe a guy that can earn a yellow label as well.
He's 5'7". 170 pounds.
Yep.
Ran a mid 4.5.
Yep.
Just that for me is just where I kind of got stuck. And I understand some of the handcuffs were based on the offense last year too, right? But are we averaging 9 yards a catch for our career?
The guy had some big time production last year.
I understand he was targeted a ton, but how difficult is it to find somebody who's going to catch 54 out of 62 targets when your average depth of target's like 3 yards? And then you try to expand and extrapolate on that. And there's just not an athletic profile there that gives me a great sense of comfort that there's going to be a lot more. Now, with this offense, what I will concede to you is somebody has to catch the football, and they can't just run the ball every down. So I would not be surprised to see him be a high volume target. But as this roster graduates and matures and you get more talent, is Greg Dortch going to be your wide receiver 2.5? Probably not.
Maybe.
I'd be stunned. That for me was where I was like, I just don't see a super appealing future path beyond A, the opportunity that's going to come this year because the offense is what the offense is going to look like. And then B, the athletic profile.
I'm asking for a pink here as an incomplete.
Fine.
To see how it evolves because the arrow's pointing up.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right. It's fine.
Chris Barnes.
Okay.
You had him as a replacement level player, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
And I remember Chris Barnes because I had the Packers for regional scouting last year. I remember watching a good amount of Chris Barnes, and I always just thought that there was some appeal there as a player. Obviously, this is a fourth-year player, played his first 3 seasons in Green Bay, started 23 games his first 2 years in 20 and 21. Reasonable levels of production. Not particularly good against the pass, but I think he's a reliable tackler. I think he's pretty physical. He's well slapped together out of UCLA, 230-pound backer with some athleticism. I get it. They drafted his replacement in Quay Walker and kind of transitioned away there. So I understand that kind of puts a glass ceiling on what you would forecast for him. But I think if he's your third or fourth linebacker, you're in decent shape.
I think I would agree with you that when I've watched Chris Barnes play for the Packers, I thought he was decent. Where I leaned into the orange label, the replacement level, is that this is a player that had 3 years in Green Bay, and like you mentioned, had some starting opportunities early on. But what bothered me was the special teams profile. Like, if you're going to be the third linebacker, I need you to be a 4-phase special teams player, and the Packers never really allowed him to be a 4-phase guy. So that was kind of my critique of him as a depth player. Maybe that'll unlock in Arizona. I'm not sure, but I think
about 30% of the special team snaps his first 2 seasons. Now, he hardly played last year, and he also only dressed in a third of the games.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of those snaps that he played, 74 of the 239 career special team snaps that he's taken were on the field goal block team. I want to see more kick return. I want to see more punt return type stuff.
As a third linebacker, do you have to play teams?
Yes.
I get if it's your fourth or fifth, but if he's your third, and he's the third in Arizona, let's be honest, right?
Right, but I mean, what's his snap percentage? If everyone's healthy, what's his snap percentage going to be on defense? Minimal, less than 20%.
No, I'd say more than 20%.
No, teams don't play 3 linebackers.
Let's go.
They don't play 3 linebackers.
He's played 52. He's played over 50% of the snaps in 2 of his 3 seasons in Green Bay. I put a box of Built Bars on over 20% defensive snap share for Chris Barnes.
Of total snaps that the Arizona Cardinals play, or percentage of games the snaps that he's active in.
Which would you be more comfortable with?
Well, I need to have injury thresholds and everything placed on here.
Okay, so maybe we do some legwork and finalize that. But I'd be willing to put a box of Built Bars on a bet that Chris Barnes plays more than 20% of snaps.
I'm probably going to take it if you agree to my injury stipulations. It was like, if he starts, then that changes everything, and there was one injury away. If he's the third
Thomas
linebacker,
Booker all over again.
if he's the third linebacker behind Kaiser White and Zaven Collins, I don't think he touches 20% of snaps.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll meet you on your quality depth label.
Thank you. Which just leaves Will Hernandez.
I think Will Hernandez stabilized himself after a bumpy finish with the Giants. Obviously, Joe Judge is the head coach, kind of a team in disarray. I think he came to Arizona and has stabilized his play well enough for me to say that he's a low-end sufficient starter. He got a decent contract from this regime, extension this offseason, at a minimum a depth player. That's kind of where I would view Will Hernandez.
Would you meet me at quality depth?
I mean, if that's where I have to go, that's fine. Getting paid $4.5 million a season here for 2 years.
I understand that, but that I've watched other teams give like Dan Feeney 3.5 this year to literally be a utility player. It's in the same ballpark.
All right, I'll go quality depth. That's fine.
Okay. Now he's going to start, right? And look, if you get the same kind of play again, maybe I'd hear you this time next year. I actually probably would hear you this time next year. But just with how bad it was in New York, I think we need a little bit more separation away from that before I'm willing to say, yes, Will Hernandez is somebody that I ideally would like to be in my starting five. Is that fair?
Man, I can go back to this offensive line. I want to see Lecitus Smith start as well. How do I get Smith, Jones, Johnson on the field in their most optimum spots? That would be my number one priority.
Sign Froholt. That's how you get that.
That doesn't preclude me from doing anything. Oh, yell to Froholt. Get it. Come at me, pronunciation police.
And they brought in Dennis Daly too.
Now that's a guy that can't see the field. That can't happen.
We know what you are, Dennis Daly, as a player, right?
That guy don't need to make the team.
All right. So from a roster quality perspective, Joe, they are neck and neck with the LA Rams.
Ooh.
At the bottom of this list. And they're our 31st team. When you count for quarterbacks, the Rams will be a better team. So we still have to do cross checks and quality checks. But I think the separation is enough, or you can say, Arizona, you should be coming into this season with the expectation that you're going to be in very significant contention for the number 1 overall pick.
And you have Houston's first round pick.
You're going to get some really good football players,
dude.
And that's what you're excited about, right?
Yes.
Like that's what you should be excited about, is what this can look like with the assets that you've collected, and that being a fast track process for you. So we'll be along for the ride, but just as a rebuilding team, if you're in the driver's seat from a roster construction perspective, you have enough questions, you have enough young players where that's kind of your expectation, and you have extra assets, I think you've done some stuff right to have the integrity of honesty of what you need to do to get your team back to where you want it to be. So I think that this regime should be applauded for that, even though we are saying that you guys probably don't have a very good team this year. It's okay. It's good. That's how it should be.
And Cliff and Keim are gone.
That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We appreciate you guys for making us a part of your day. Come on back and see us again tomorrow. We have the New Orleans Saints. And then tomorrow night on the YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's live takes on takes. So bring your hot takes to the YouTube channel. That will be our Friday show as well. So lots of good content coming your way. Plan accordingly, and we hope to see you then. Peace.